to have the chairman of a committee not only think it was right to meet with a witness beforehand to discuss what was going to happen at the committee, but to now tell us that one of the ministers that she is supposed to be scrutinising, namely a junior minister, is beyond the reach of the committee.
That's not what I said.
Frankly, incredible.
Goodness.
And of course, Paula has a lot to answer for in that regard, because she shielded the junior minister at the previous meeting when Timothy Gasson tried to ask her what she saw in relation to McMonagle at the British Heart Foundation, and the First Minister...
Michelle O'Neill stepped in, is actually what happened.
Which is what was meant to happen.
And Paula ruled that was appropriate when it patently was not.
Did your committee send any questions, full questions in advance to the First Minister?
OK, so last week at our committee meeting in Derry, and Brian was there...
It's a yes or a no, isn't it?
I'm giving you the context. And I think you need to give me the space. So the clerk of the committee suggested, in terms of trying to demonstrate to the First Minister why she needed to come back, he suggested that members should supply questions. He clarified in an email following up why this was something. Mr. Allister's colleague didn't bother going to the meeting. But another part of another part of this, Jim, is that the clerk of our committee I need to make this point.
Yeah, but
the clerk of our committee is extremely professional.
Yeah.
Jim would know that if he had taken up his position on the Executive Office Committee.
Can you help me with the answer to the question?
No.
Did your committee supply full questions to Michelle O'Neill? Only two?
Only two questions.
Two full questions?
Yes, but
what
I'm
were
saying
they?
Is, they were about safeguarding.
And why was she given full questions ahead of being scrutinised?
And this was what the clerk had suggested.
No, but you're the chair, so you must understand why.
We discussed it as a committee.
And what was your understanding of why someone is giving a full question before appearing?
Because it was to demonstrate why she would be coming back to answer in her role as Executive Office Minister.
How does that demonstrate anything other than...
No, Stephen, as opposed to party political questions that she does not have to answer to at our committee. So that's what it was about.
But she sat there today saying that she was being asked party political questions.
Yes.
So which written questions did you hand over beforehand? And who wrote the questions?
It wasn't me.
On that, Stephen.
You go ahead.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Yes, I provided...
Well, you were claiming this morning it was just broad brushstroke. It wasn't.
No, I provided some sample questions in advance, which included references to McMonagle and Niall O'Donnell.
You provided questions in advance?
Yes, we did, because we had to make the case.
No,
we were asking, yes, at the suggestion of the committee clerk, we were asking the Minister to come back 2 weeks after she had already been at committee. So we had to provide a rationale for inviting her back. And the rationale was for how much the story had changed from Sinn Féin in the intervening time, with several U-turns.
And were those questions provided in advance then asked, word for word?
No, they weren't.
No,
because they were provided context of the sort of issues we wanted to raise. And it was said at the time that the committee reserves the right to ask further questions and supplementary questions.
Or other questions.
But for the First Minister to claim, I wonder why she was there today, because she knew in advance those were the matters that were going to be raised. So what was the point in her turning up, knowing that that subject matter would come up, and then saying, I'm not going to answer anything on that topic?
Is it the norm to get questions in advance?
Well, it shouldn't be. And I don't think there should be any private meetings that go on before the First Minister is scrutinised by the committee. But the story here is that there was actually no scrutiny. Parliament building, Stormont, looks the part. It is a beautiful, grand building. But what goes on within its walls is completely and absolutely shambolic. And we saw this when there should have been the questioning, appropriate questioning of Arlene Foster. We saw that didn't happen then. And we are seeing an exact and absolute repeat now. I think for Michelle O'Neill to say that it's party political, that she can't answer the question because it is not technically relating to her role as First Minister, may be factually, legally, officially correct, but it is morally wrong. She had promised on October the 7th, she had said, I think it was in a response to a question by Diane Dodds, that there would be openness and transparency. She had an opportunity to do so today. One of the questions that Timothy Gaston asked, it was really simple. You know, the hours and days that Michael McMonigal, a convicted paedophile, worked in her office. Now, anybody with an ounce of decency would reply to that, would want the answer to be out there, but she didn't do it.
Stephen, could I make a comment on this, if I can? You know, in Westminster, I've seen the Prime Minister questioned about whether or not he was beholden to donors who contributed £100,000 worth of clothing and spectacles. He didn't say, that's a party political matter, I can't answer. And yet we have a First Minister who, on a far more searching question, are you a puppet of an illegal organisation, as the security assessment suggests, can't be answered that question. You know, she came today determined not to answer.
But Jim,
questions.
the police aren't answering.
She didn't answer questions.
The police aren't answering that question either about what
true.
their monitor is telling them.
And
that's some type of accepted. I'm getting all these looks. So why'd you ask that on Friday? It's some type of accepted norm in this country that we don't ask that question anymore.
Well, because it has political implications. As the First Minister told us today, she doesn't want anything of that sort. So she doesn't want to be asked if we've got a security assessment that says Sinn Féin is run and controlled by an illegal army council. You, as the leader of Sinn Féin,
well, Sinn Féin have answered it. That said,
are you run
Sinn
by the
Féin
army
have
council?
answered it. They said the IRA doesn't exist anymore.
Question.
That's what they said.
That's a legitimate question. And I must say today, the first couple of questions from the chairman were very fair, but she allowed herself to be rolled over by the First Minister, who thought she would chair the meeting as well and tell her what the legal parameters were, instead of the chairman ruling the meeting. But did your
Jim, did Timothy Gaston, in other words, your political party, did you ask one question today about protecting children? Did you ask one question? Did you ask one question about creating better policy so that we might have a chance of stopping people abusing children?
Stephen, this all arises on the issue of safeguarding. That's what the McMonigal case is all about. It's about the safeguarding issue. This issue wouldn't be before the committee, but for it being a safeguarding issue. But to have a First Minister who thinks that she can come in, and of course she holds the committee in total contempt as a scrutiny committee, and well might she, after the experience of today, because she was able to tell them what the rulings from the chair should be. She was able to tell them what questions she would answer and what she wouldn't. And she was able to rule what was a legitimate question. And the chair sat there and allowed that to happen.
No, I didn't. No wonder
This committee has brought itself into total disrepute.
Well, today we were actually meant to be looking, to pick up on Suzanne's point, today we actually had panels around the new 3 language bodies, and it was going to be a really good session, and we had to take this instead. Today was very unedifying. I don't think that anybody left there with any answers that they were looking for, and I do think that, you know, it was a very difficult meeting to chair because nobody wanted to answer ask the questions that were within remit, and nobody wanted to answer them.
I guess it's a question of how atypical is this place. Can you imagine the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, being able to sit in a Westminster scrutiny committee and saying that's a party political question, move on? Can you imagine? And you allowed that to happen, didn't you?
Well, I went back to the member who was questioning and said, can you couch it in relation to the roles and responsibilities of the Executive Office? That is our role as a scrutiny committee.
So what's the calibre of people on your scrutiny committee?
Well, you may look down at the question. You saw my first question, and hopefully you'll get to my second question, because I brought that a matter for the Assembly Commission, and it sounds very officious, but that is the body that... Jim, that is the body that would investigate the use of public money within the Assembly. I'm sorry that there are procedures that govern how we operate up there, but that is where any complaints go. Any complaints also would go to the Standards Commissioner in terms of breaches of ministerial code.
That's where the operational side of that goes, but that does not stop a scrutiny committee, which is, if it were a scrutiny committee, pressing the minister in whose employment this person was, on the legitimate question of how long, what was he doing, and what was he working on issues that touched upon safeguarding? She wouldn't even tell you how long he was there. We don't know the answers to any of that.
Well, has your colleague...
To have a chairman of a scrutiny committee say those weren't questions for my committee, this is just going from bad to worse.
Well, I would ask...
You might as well wrap up that scrutiny committee if that's the way it's going to operate.
And I asked your colleague whether he had asked the Assembly Commission these questions, and he wasn't able to answer. So he needs to direct the questions. So he needs to direct the questions
that didn't get any answers. Don't you worry about the Assembly Commission. You can't run your own committee. Never mind them. So just get the
case, Paula, that you could have allowed that question to go,
I had already asked the question.
And Michelle O'Neill could have chosen whether to answer it or not.
I had asked a question at the start around the damage to the Irish language community off the back of that incident in Belfast City Hall, and she...
Well, why didn't you shut your own question down?
Because I had couched mine in relation to the language bodies and the equality and protection for minority language rights that they have protection for. I asked the question and she answered in that regard, but she said she was not going to speak to any of the incidents from Saturday night. So she had been very clear she wasn't going to go there.
And did she have these discussions with you
pre-night? No, not at all. Not at all. Honest to goodness. I did not disclose any of the areas that I would be even remotely asking questions on.
We're going to see all this when we see the minutes.
No problem.
If the minutes exist.
No problem.
Do the minutes definitely exist?
When did it become the discretion of a witness as to what questions should be asked and what questions should be answered? That's the role of the chair. It's not the role of the witness. But we saw the reversal today.
We received,
and the witness decided what should answer, what was legitimate, and what shouldn't be asked.
Well, it is up to the witness to answer in the way that they see fit, Jim. You would know this.
Not to refuse, and not to decree what can be asked and what can't be asked. And that's what the First Minister was doing today.
Apparently she had received her own legal advice.
Well, Sinn Féin...
She took over your role, Paula, and performed the role of chair of her own investigation into herself. And that's why it descended into total...
Question about McMonigal from Gaston.
Time again we've heard that Mr McMonigal was a press officer from Sinn Féin, whereas we have the First Minister sitting in front of us here now. The First Minister has employed this man from March 2020 to May 2020, and there's a serious question over how the monies were spent or paid to him for his services. And you're not, and the First Minister's deciding she's not wanting to provide any details. How many days a week he worked in your office? Did he do any work for you? Or is it a case of Sinn Féin just using money from your budget for the political animal?
Timothy, have you referred these matters to the Assembly Commission or the Standards Commission?
This is the TU office, and I have the opportunity, when the First Minister's sitting in front of me, to ask questions. Who's chairing the meeting? Give Paula a place.
It's Chair, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, then we'll move on. If that's what you want. If you don't want to follow the ministerial code, if you don't want to uphold the 7 principles of public life, that's a matter for you. You're talking about confidence. You're talking about confidence, and you're not doing yourself any justice today.
Sorry, you're badgering a witness. We have gone through this before around the code of conduct of committee members. So, First Minister respond, and then I'll let you back in. Timothy, go ahead.
All I would say, Chair, is I take my pledge of office very seriously. I take the use of public funds very seriously, that I will stand over my role in all of those things.
Mike Fealty, the bottom line is the question wasn't answered. Still hasn't been answered anywhere.
And Sinead McLaughlin, the SDLP representative in that committee, made this very point. They have serious questions to ask, and if that committee is not the right forum to do it in, then where is the right forum for it to happen in? And she wanted the First Minister to come and answer these questions. And look, let's not beat about the bush. The First Minister obfuscated every single question, to some of whom you would have thought would have been very single word answers.
I think Carol